If I told you that women actually have a biological equivalent to a prostate gland and that it secretes the exact same proteins that doctors use to test for prostate cancer in men, you would probably wonder why nobody talks about it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's wild how little that gets discussed.
Right. You might even wonder, like, what other crucial parts of human biology are just completely missing from the public conversation. So today we're doing a deep dive into a topic that is frankly universally relevant to you or maybe someone you love, but it almost never gets discussed with the scientific rigor it deserves.
Which is really unfortunate because it's such a vital area of health.
Exactly. We're talking about the complex mechanics of female intimate health.
Yeah.
And specifically, we're focusing on baseline arousal lubrication and those profound tissue changes that happen during menopause or, after childbirth.
Yeah, and it is just a fascinating area of medicine to look at today. I mean, the science has advanced incredibly fast over the last few years, but the public understanding is, well, it's still stuck decades in the past, right?
Yeah, completely.
We are moving so far beyond just basic symptom management now. We're getting into like actual tissue regeneration, which is huge.
It is huge.
Yeah.
And to guide you through this, we've pulled together a really compelling stack of sources. We are looking at peer-reviewed gynecological and urological reviews, a real-world clinical case series on something called genitourinary syndrome of menopause.
Which you'll often hear referred to as GSM.
Right, GSM. And we also have some grounded clinical FAQ guidelines from women's health clinics to see how these theories actually play out in patient treatment.
So our mission today is really threefold. First, we're going to uncover the true anatomy behind female lubrication, because it's not what most people think.
No, not at all.
Second, we'll unpack the cutting-edge science of a regenerative treatment called polynucleotides. And third, we are going to answer a very specific critical question from the medical literature.
Which is?
What role do these polynucleotides actually play in recovering glandular function and baseline lubrication?
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we get into the polynucleotides, which, yes, it involves salmon DNA, and we will absolutely get to that,
Oh, we definitely will.
I think we need to understand the fundamental biological machinery first. Because, if we don't know where natural moisture comes from in the first place, none of the high-tech regenerative treatments are going to make any sense.
Right. It's like trying to fix a car without knowing how the engine works.
Exactly. So let's start with the glands. Where is this moisture actually coming from?
Well, when we look at the mechanics of female lubrication, the heavy lifting is done by two primary sets of glands. The first are the Bartholin's glands.
Okay.
So if you imagine the opening of the vagina, these are located slightly posterior, so to the left and the right. And the medical texts, they describe them as compound alveolar glands.
Yeah, I saw that term in the gynecological reviews. For
Did it?
those of us who aren't anatomists, what does compound alveolar actually look like?
The best way to picture it is to think of a microscopic bunch of grapes connected to a central vine.
Oh, okay. Like a cluster.
Exactly. So instead of just one simple tube, you have multiple little sacs. Those are the alveoli. And they all produce fluid and sort of funnel it into a single main duct.
Got it.
They are tiny, about the size of a pea, but they are incredibly efficient. Their primary job is secreting mucus to lubricate the opening of the vagina, particularly to support natural arousal.
Now, I noticed the developmental biology in our sources here. These glands, they develop from the exact same embryonic tissue as the male bulbourethral glands, right? Which serve a really similar lubricating function.
Yeah, they show that identical developmental origin. It's pretty amazing. But the Bartholin's glands, they aren't working alone.
Right. There's a second set.
There is, and it's arguably even more complex and frankly just a lot more mysterious. These are the Skene's glands.
Okay, the Skene's glands. The sources had a lot to say about these.
They did. They're located on the anterior vaginal wall adjacent to the distal urethra, and they seem to do much more than just provide, basic moisture.
Yeah, this is where the biology gets genuinely surprising for a lot of people.
Definitely. What's fascinating here is that the Skene's glands are actually homologous to the male prostate gland.
The female prostate.
Exactly. Because of that, a lot of urologists now literally refer to them as the female prostate. And they don't just secrete standard mucus like the Bartholin's glands do. They secrete what the literature calls an ultrafiltrate of blood plasma.
An ultrafiltrate. That sounds like highly processed.
It is. It is essentially the liquid gold of your blood. The body, it takes the blood plasma and filters it down so purely that it just looks like water, retaining only highly specific components.
Wow.
Yeah, this fluid encases massive concentrations of glucose and fructose. But the true shocker for a lot of researchers was discovering that this fluid also contains high levels of prostate-specific antigen, or PSA.
Wait, PSA. As in the exact same protein marker that doctors look for when they draw blood to screen men for prostate cancer.
The very same protein. Finding PSA and also prostatic acid phosphatase, or PAP, in this fluid, it strongly reinforces their functional and biological similarity to the male prostate.
That is just wild to me.
Right. And beyond just contributing to lubrication during sexual activity, researchers believe these specific secretions possess, like, intense antimicrobial properties.
So they're fighting off infections.
Basically, yeah. They essentially act as a biological shield for the female urinary tract, flushing out bacteria and really protecting the urethra.
Okay, so if I'm picturing this correctly. The female body has this incredibly sophisticated built-in plumbing and irrigation system, basically.
That's a good way to put it.
You've got the Bartholin's glands at the back,
Yeah.
handling the heavy mucus production,
Hmm.
and then the Skene's glands at the front, providing this highly specialized antimicrobial plasma filtrate.
Right.
Seems perfectly designed, but here is where I have to push back on the biology a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
If we have these dedicated, highly specialized glands, why does vaginal dryness, or what the medical literature calls vulvovaginal atrophy, why does that become such a massive, debilitating issue for up to 2/3 of postmenopausal women?
That is a $1 million question.
Right, because if the glands are there, are they just mechanically breaking down as a person ages? Like, is the plumbing just failing?
Well, that is the logical assumption that even doctors made for a really long time. They figured the plumbing just gets blocked or the glands simply, forget how to work over time.
But it's not that simple.
Not at all. Looking at the broader tissue ecosystem, it's way more complicated. While the glands are crucial, obviously, the entire process of baseline lubrication and arousal moisture is highly multifactorial.
It doesn't have it in a vacuum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It relies heavily on estrogen, on robust blood flow, on intact nerve signals, and critically, on the overall health of the extracellular matrix in the vaginal mucosa.
Let's pause on the extracellular matrix for a second,
Yeah.
because that came up a lot in the sources. That is the structural scaffolding surrounding the cells, right?
Yes, exactly.
The collagen, the elastin, just the physical environment that these glands actually live inside of.
You can think of the extracellular matrix as the neighborhood where these glands reside. So when a woman goes through menopause, or even during certain postpartum periods, actually, and estrogen levels drop significantly, it's not just the individual glands that suffer.
The whole neighborhood goes downhill.
The entire neighborhood degrades. Without estrogen, you see a massive loss of subepithelial collagen. The vaginal rugae, those are those accordion-like folds of tissue that allow for expansion, stretch, and comfort. They flatten out completely.
Oh, wow.
And the blood vessels shrink, which drastically reduces the vascularity.
So it's less like the sprinkler system broke and more like the soil itself completely dried out and turned to sand.
Yes.
Like the sprinklers might still be there in the ground, but they don't have any water pressure or healthy ground to draw moisture from anymore.
That is a perfect analogy. The tissue literally becomes hypoxic, meaning it is starved of oxygen and vital nutrients because the blood flow has decreased so severely.
That sounds incredibly painful.
It really is for a lot of women. The mucosal lining becomes thin, fragile, and it just loses its elasticity. This system-wide degradation is what we call genitourinary syndrome of menopause, or GSM.
So because the entire neighborhood is failing, just focusing on stimulating the glands won't solve the problem.
Precisely. If estrogen depletion turns the soil to sand, as you said, we obviously can't just fix the sprinklers.
Right. Now, historically, the gold standard has been localized estrogen therapy, hasn't it? You replace the missing hormone, and the tissue responds by rebuilding that matrix.
Yes, that's traditionally how it's treated.
But our sources are very clear that estrogen simply isn't an option for everyone.
No, it's really not.
Some women have a history of hormone receptor-positive cancers, which makes estrogen therapy dangerous. Others experience, postpartum dryness, where hormonal intervention can interfere with breastfeeding.
And many simply prefer non-hormonal routes. They just don't want to use hormones.
Right. So science had to find a different way to fertilize that soil. And that brings us to the regenerative option in our stack of sources. Polynucleotides, or PNs.
Yes, polynucleotides. They are gaining massive traction in regenerative medicine right now.
Okay, so to understand how they rebuild that extracellular matrix without using hormones, we have to look at what they actually are. They are highly purified fragments of DNA, right?
They are.
And as you mentioned earlier, in the commercial medical products used today, they're often extracted from the gonads of trout or salmon.
Yes, salmon or trout DNA.
I have to admit, reading the phrase salmon sperm DNA injected for vaginal rejuvenation in the clinic, FAQs, made me do a double take. It sounds, I don't know, like late-night infomercial marketing.
It absolutely sounds like science fiction. I get that reaction a lot. But the biochemistry is incredibly robust.
Okay, let's get into the biochemistry then.
So these polynucleotides are hydrophilic polymers, which basically means they naturally attract and hold onto water molecules.
Like a sponge.
Exactly. But their true power isn't just acting as a sponge. It is how they interact with human cells at a deep biochemical level. They operate through two primary mechanisms. The first is what biochemists call the salvage pathway.
Okay, the salvage pathway. I was trying to reason through this concept from the clinical notes.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this means the cells are scavenging for spare parts because they are too, like, exhausted to build what they need from scratch.
You've hit the nail on the head. That's exactly it. Normally, when a cell needs to repair itself or divide, it has to synthesize brand new DNA from base molecules.
Right, which takes effort.
It's a process called de novo synthesis. But in atrophic, estrogen-depleted vaginal tissue, the cells are damaged, they're hypoxic, and functionally exhausted.
So they don't have the energy.
Exactly. Synthesizing DNA from scratch is incredibly energy-intensive. It demands metabolic resources the cell simply doesn't have at that point.
Okay, so how do the polynucleotides help?
Well, polynucleotides bypass this entire exhausting process. As the injected fragments break down in the tissue, they provide the cells with preformed nucleotide fragments, adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the analogy that came to mind for me is building a house.
Oh, let's hear it.
It's like you are trying to build a brick wall when you are starving and you haven't slept in days. Normally, your body forces you to go out, dig up the clay, bake it in a kiln to make the bricks, and then start building the wall.
Which you just can't do if you're exhausted.
Right. Instead, polynucleotides just drop a pallet of pre-made, high-quality bricks right on your front lawn. You skip the manufacturing entirely and get straight to rebuilding the house.
That is exactly the cellular reality. It is pure cellular nutrition for DNA repair. It saves the fibroblasts an enormous amount of metabolic energy.
Which lets them get to work.
Right. It allows them to jumpstart the repair process, even in a highly compromised hypoxic environment. But providing the raw materials is only half the story.
There's more.
Oh, yeah. The second mechanism is even more dynamic. It involves something called the adenosine A2A receptor.
The clinical reviews spend a significant amount of time on this receptor. How does dropping salmon DNA into the tissue activate it?
So polynucleotides don't just passively sit there as building blocks. They actively signal the cells to change their behavior. The PN fragments bind directly to the adenosine A2A receptors located on the outer surface of fibroblasts.
And just to remind you, the listener, fibroblasts are the cellular factories responsible for producing collagen and elastin, right?
Yes, the collagen factories.
Now, the sources mentioned that this binding increases something called CAM-AMP and activates PKA. What is actually happening inside the cell when those acronyms come into play?
Think of the A2A receptor on the outside of the cell as a doorbell. When the DNA fragments ring it, it wakes up messengers inside the house. Those are AMP and PKA.
Okay.
Those messengers immediately run to the factory floor of the cell and basically yell, "Start making collagen." This signaling cascade dramatically ramps up the production of collagen type IN3, which rebuilds that flattened, fragile scaffolding we talked about earlier.
So it's actively commanding the tissue to thicken.
Yes. And it also stimulates the release of vascular endothelial growth factor, or VEGF, which promotes angiogenesis.
Angiogenesis being the growth of brand new blood vessels, right?
Exactly. More blood vessels mean more oxygen and nutrients flooding back into the tissue. And crucially, this signaling pathway sharply reduces inflammation by suppressing pro-inflammatory cytokines like TNF-alpha and IL-6.
I see the word cytokines a lot in immunology. They're essentially cellular text messages, right?
Basically, yeah.
And in this case, the text messages are constantly screaming for the tissue to be inflamed and irritated.
Exactly. The atrophic tissue is stuck in a chronic state of low-grade inflammation. The polynucleotides intercept those text messages and turn the volume down.
That's amazing.
So you have the three-pronged biological response. You're rebuilding the collagen, the scaffolding, bringing in a new blood supply, and turning down chronic inflammation.
Which makes this fundamentally different from just Going to the pharmacy and buying a standard over-the-counter moisturizer, or even getting a simple hyaluronic acid filler injected.
Completely different.
Because a traditional filler just physically occupies space. It's a gel that holds water to provide temporary volume. But polynucleotides provide that structural hydration because they attract water while also combining it with this active biological instruction set.
Exactly.
They're literally telling the tissue to reverse the degradation.
They are shifting the cellular environment from a state of breakdown to a state of active regeneration. It's pretty profound.
Okay, so the mechanism is biologically sound. The neighborhood is getting rescued. But let's bring this back to the core question of our deep dive.
Right, the glands.
Yeah. What role do these polynucleotides actually play in recovering glandular function? Like, if they are this powerful at regenerating tissue, do they specifically target and revive the Skene's and Bartholin's glands to fix baseline lubrication?
It's a very fair question.
Because when you are a patient dealing with painful sex, chronic dryness, or just the daily discomfort of GSM, that is what you ultimately care about. Does the plumbing turn back on?
To answer that with the scientific rigor we promised, we really have to look at the clinical data alongside the strict limitations of the current research.
Right.
Let's start with the real-world clinical study from the OA Text Journal. They looked at a cohort of 61 women suffering from severe vulvovaginal atrophy who used a polynucleotide-based vaginal cream.
And the results in that study were incredibly striking.
They really were.
Over 60% of the women reported significant symptom relief within just 2 weeks. But when you look at the specific symptom reductions, they were massive.
Yeah, the numbers are huge.
There was a 72.5% reduction in vaginal burning, a 71.4% reduction in vaginal dryness, and a 71.0% reduction in dyspareunia, which is the medical term for pain during intercourse.
We have to pause and consider what those numbers actually mean for a human being. Because dyspareunia isn't just a clinical metric.
No, not at all.
It dictates a woman's relationship with her own body, her intimacy with her partner, and just her daily mental health.
It's life-altering.
Exactly. A 71% reduction in that pain means women are getting their lives back. The polynucleotides clearly restored moisture, elasticity, and profound comfort.
But there's a catch, right?
However, and this is a vital nuance when evaluating any medical treatment, when we consult the clinical FAQ guidelines from women's health clinics, they issue a strict, explicit warning against making unproven claims regarding specific gland regeneration.
Yeah, notice how careful the clinics are with their wording on this. They state that while PNs absolutely improve the surrounding mucosal environment, boost fibroblast activity, and increase local hydration, there is no settled clinical claim that regenerative injectables, whether it's polynucleotides, exosomes, or PRP, specifically recover Skene's or Bartholin's glandular secretion.
And that distinction protects patients from false hope and predatory marketing. We know PNs increase local hydration and physically repair the extracellular matrix. But arousal, lubrication, and actual glandular secretion are deeply multifactorial.
So it's not a one-to-one fix.
No, you cannot just isolate the Bartholin's gland and hit a regenerate button. The process of natural lubrication involves local blood flow, intricate nerve pathways, hormonal balance, your psychological mood, and just the relationship context.
That's all connected.
The physical glands are just one piece of a very complex puzzle.
So asking directly on behalf of you, the listener, if I get a polynucleotide treatment, it is not flipping a magic on switch inside my Skene's and Bartholin's glands. Like, it isn't going in and unclogging the plumbing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's best to think of it this way. Polynucleotides are rescuing the neighborhood, not necessarily rewiring the plumbing of the individual glands.
Okay, rescuing the neighborhood.
When the vaginal mucosa becomes atrophic, it is paper-thin, frail, and incredibly prone to micro-tears. It hurts simply to exist, let alone engage in intimacy. By using PNs to restore the thickness, the elasticity, and the baseline hydration of the vaginal wall, the overall daily comfort is vastly improved.
And when the tissue is healthy, thick, and doesn't hurt, it basically breaks the pain feedback loop in the brain, right?
Precisely. Pain actively shuts down the body's natural arousal response. If you anticipate pain, the nerves won't signal the glands to release fluid, and the blood vessels just won't dilate.
That makes total sense.
By creating a healthy, well-vascularized, pain-free tissue environment, you support the body's natural ability to become aroused.
So it's indirect, but very effective.
Right. So even if the polynucleotides aren't directly regenerating the specific secretory cells inside the Bartholin's gland, the end result for the patient is vastly more moisture, significantly less pain, and better overall function simply because the entire ecosystem has been revitalized and can respond to natural signals again.
That is fascinating. Going back to our analogy, if the soil is rich, healthy, and naturally retains water, the plants can thrive again, regardless of whether the actual sprinkler head was, perfectly repaired to its original state.
That's a great way to summarize it.
It is about restoring the capacity of the tissue to respond to the signals your brain and body are already trying to send.
And the reputable clinics emphasize this heavily. You will absolutely see glossy marketing ads claiming these salmon DNA injectables will reverse menopause or completely cure glandular failure.
Of course.
The science shows us they are incredibly effective, revolutionary tools for tissue support and symptom relief, but they must be discussed honestly. We have to recognize the limits of what the current clinical data can actually prove.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway for you listening. Why does diving this deep into the microscopic mechanics of fibroblasts and nucleotide receptors actually matter?
It's a fair question.
Because whether you are navigating unexpected postpartum changes, moving through the complex transition of menopause, or you're just inherently curious about the frontiers of regenerative medicine, understanding how these treatments work is your best armor.
Absolutely.
Knowing the difference between rescuing the neighborhood and fixing a specific gland protects you from the marketing hype, and it empowers you to make genuinely informed choices about your own body.
Knowledge is most valuable when you can apply it. Understanding that your body relies on a delicate balance of glands, blood flow, and the extracellular matrix changes the way you interact with your doctor.
It changes the whole conversation.
It moves the conversation from a desperate, give me a quick fix, to an empowered, how can we best support this entire tissue ecosystem?
So what does this all mean? It means that human biology is brilliantly, wonderfully complex. We have incredible new tools like polynucleotides that can essentially hand our exhausted cells a blueprint and a palette of raw materials to heal themselves.
Which is amazing.
But there are no simplistic magic buttons. Your body is an ecosystem, not a machine with a single broken switch that can just be flipped back on.
Very true. And to leave you with one final, fascinating mystery from our sources today, just something to really mull over.
Oh yes, let's hear it.
We mentioned earlier that the Skene's glands, the female prostate, secrete an ultrafiltrate containing prostate-specific antigen, or PSA.
Right, the cancer marker used for men.
Yes. In men, measuring PSA levels in the blood is a standard, globally utilized diagnostic tool for prostate health and cancer screening.
Right.
But in women, we know the Skene glands produce this exact same protein, and we suspect they play a massive role in antimicrobial defense for the female urinary tract.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
This raises a profound question. Could the levels of PSA in a woman's body one day be used as a vital diagnostic marker for female urological or immune health?
That is such an interesting thought.
Right. Could we track recurring female urinary tract infections, pelvic inflammatory issues, or even glandular failure simply by looking at female PSA levels?
Wow. That is an enormous blind spot in medical history. We've been using this precise biological marker to save men's lives for decades, and we just largely ignore its presence in women.
It is a profound blind spot that is just begging for clinical research. The female body still holds so many secrets, and science is really only just beginning to map them out.
What an incredible thought to end on. If the built-in plumbing and irrigation systems of the female body are beautifully complex, the ways we are learning to support them are even more so. Keep asking the hard questions, keep looking past the glossy marketing, and remember that when it comes to understanding your own health, you always deserve the deep dive.